In recent weeks, Bungie, our beloved overlords and creators of Destiny 2, have announced a new PvP-focused game called Marathon. Marathon is going to be an extraction shooter style game that is going to be a new release in the upcoming years from the studio. Why does it matter? Why are we covering it when we typically cover Destiny 2 content? Because there's been a number of controversies that have actually sprouted up because of this announcement of this new game. Beyond extraction shooters being an already really niche category, this announcement from Bungie is coming at a time when they already have been neglecting their PvP community in Destiny 2 for a very long time. Although we don't have actual concrete gameplay footage to show you just yet, what I do want to be able to do is walk through a game that is an extraction shooter that I think is actually pretty close to what we will probably get with Marathon, and talk about the ups and downs of that game and what is potentially on the horizon for Marathon. Because so few people have actually experienced, let alone even played an extraction shooter game because it is so niche, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about some of the possibilities, but also some of the potential drawbacks of this genre of game. Now, just to make sure we're all on the same page, let's answer the key question: what is an extraction shooter? Very simply, an extraction shooter is a game where players are competing against each other, where they are scavenging loot, collecting data, and completing quests before being able to extract out of the environment. The key component being that you have to be able to not only collect those things, but get to the extraction point alive, intact, in order to be able to progress forward in the mission. Now, some may ask, why does that matter? Why are you explaining it? It's pretty self-explanatory. Well, the thing for me is, one, not only operating from a similar definition and standpoint, but also giving out a hard truth that I believe a lot of Destiny 2 players are thinking of an extraction shooter as more of a pure battle royale type game, which it is not. If you take a look at most extraction shooter games, yes, there is a PvP component and there's some competitiveness that we'll talk about later in the video, but overall, the main goal is still to scavenge loot, complete quests, and get out alive. This is not about killing the most people, this is about being able to complete quests. This is only a hard truth because when people think about Marathon and the way that it's been marketed so far, although some straight up hate the idea because Marathon does seem to be getting more resources than Destiny 2, but beyond that, thinking that you're going to go into a game that's going to be solely about PvP, I think is going to be one of the fatal flaws and potentially lead to the downfall of the game if people don't come to that realization quickly. Although Bungie has all the license in the world to make the game however they want to make it, extraction shooters at their core are about all of the pieces together, not just looking at the PvP side and looking at it as an opportunity to have big shoot 'em up moments. This is about having skill and frankly common sense enough to know when you need to pick your battles and when you just need to extract and get out of there alive. Now, jumping right in, the game that we're going to be comparing today is actually not the game that a lot of people would expect. A lot of people are probably thinking that Marathon is going to be a lot like Escape from Tarkov. In my opinion, that could be farther from the truth. Beyond the simple fact that the gameplay footage that we've seen so far clearly shows that it's going to be a game solidly within the sci-fi genre, it's also simply that the tone of Escape from Tarkov, it was much more stoic and serious than I believe Bungie would even want to go in a direction of. But rather, we're going to talk about a different game when I think gets a little bit closer to what we'll probably see with Bungie, and that game is called The Cycle Frontier. The Cycle Frontier is an extraction shooter multiplayer game running on Unreal Engine 4, coming from the Jaeger Development Publishing Group. The game dropped in 2022 in the middle of the pandemic, where a lot of other games were either getting really solid updates or new games were coming into the scene, and so the game kind of got a little outshone by a number of other titles at the time. NME gave it a 2 out of 5 stars and PC Gamer gave it a 55 out of 100, so we're not talking about a game-breaking title. But the bones of this game, to me, are some of the things that Bungie could and probably will pull inspiration from. Starting at the top of my list is the vendor system. Now, we all know, if you're a Destiny 2 player, that Bungie is no stranger to the vendor system. Having vendors like ICA, the General Marketplace, or even Osiris have really clear parallels to the Destiny 2 universe. When we think about the Gunsmith, when we think about Shaxx, when we think about the Vanguard, All of these vendors allow us the opportunity to do what? Pick up quests, or in the Destiny 2 universe, bounties. Get XP through doing different tasks and missions, as well as the ability to get vendor-specific weapons and armors that allow you to customize the game in the way that you want to play. In Destiny 2, you go to the Cosmodrome, kill a couple enemies, finish a bounty, and then go on with your day. In an extraction shooter-based game like the Cycle, you're not just blindly going out finding enemies and killing them, but you're also having to be strategic about finding the resources that you need to complete each mission at hand. Each mission increasing in difficulty, whether it is collecting materials like the bones of a dead enemy, or if it's going to a specific site and collecting construction materials, you being able to complete each task is a meaningful way to be able to rank up and increase your XP in the game. The more XP, the better the rewards, the more you can customize and play how you want to play. The next item on the list is Buildcrafting. Destiny 2 and the Destiny universe as a whole is well known for its build crafting systems, being able to customize every little detail, well not every detail, but a lot of the details of your builds, of your subclasses, to the playstyle you want to play, or just to the activity that you're involved in, is a hallmark of the Destiny franchise, not to mention Bungie in general. Although the Cycle doesn't have a build crafting system per se, one of the things I do think Bungie is going to customize and build from is the ability to be able to take in a very specific setup, whether it's certain customized armors or different healing builds, or maybe you have an offensive, aggressive build. Being able to bring in those different components into the actual planet or atmosphere or environment that you're going in to extract the resources, I do believe Bungie is going to capitalize on that since it is in their blood and bones. As for our example today, the Cycle is less build crafting and more kind of putting together the kit you want. So being able to customize what level of gear you want, whether that's your helmet or your armor pieces or your backpack, being able to bring in a scanner or a med kit or a machine gun or a sniper. All of those things do formulate into a loose definition of a kit, and I'm putting air quotes on that, but it's not so much the build crafting we know and love within Destiny 2. Again, the same can be said for other extraction shooter games, again like the well-known title Escape from Tarkov. That said, I would absolutely not put it past Bungie that we're able to do some level of build crafting that's very similar to Destiny 2, obviously not the same, but where you can go into the environment and maybe have a very healing centered build, or if you're doing co-op with a friend, being able to have more of a support build where one person is more of the scout role and the other person is more of the tank role. Being able to customize things in that regard, I do believe Bungie is going to try and implement into the game. Obviously, I'm not a dev for Marathon, I don't know, we haven't seen any gameplay as of yet, but I really don't think it's too far beyond imagination to think of the extraction shooter genre getting that classic Bungie touch to the details. One thing that the Cycle doesn't do such a great job of is actually having a really intricate, very vibrant world to actually play and explore in. While the maps are large and you do get access to different worlds as you level up in the game, the worlds themselves are still pretty bare. Even from watching gameplay of some of the worlds that I haven't unlocked yet, it still kind of feels a little bare, a little barren. And yes, these are new planets that we're exploring and all those different components that you want to build into a game, but what I can really imagine Bungie doubling, if not tripling down on, is the world building and environment building that they've been able to do, especially in this era since the Witch Queen and beyond. Beyond Light, we did not forget about you, but everything from interactive environments, destructible materials, being able to have different quests and sidelines that are taking you into secret caves and different components of the environment and landscape that you weren't originally able to see, I do believe it's in Bungie's genes to be able to pull those things out and make the world a much more vibrant place than what I've experienced in the Cycle. That said, as someone who loves to explore and loves to do all the side quests and games, and just that's my style of play, being able to do everything I can, it comes up against a pretty real tension of 2 points. One, having enemies that level up and are becoming more dangerous as you get stronger and have stronger builds. And 2, the PvP side. The simple fact that you're not going to be alone. It's not just you and your homies that are logging in together. There are going to be other people who are doing the same. So I imagine that Bungie's going to stay in the style of having really big maps to accommodate 15, 20, or maybe even 30 players at a time, which then embeds a pretty necessary but also real tension and you being able to complete side quests, get to the designated areas you want to collect the materials that you need, and then ultimately extract. If there is someone who is just going in there just to kill other players and not actually accomplish any missions, that is going to be a real threat to your progress, not only in XP, but also being able to just get through the mission and the storylines that will be available. Now, is there a possibility that Bungie goes a little bit off the beaten path and has a mode where you actually don't have to engage PvP? Maybe, but ultimately being in a space where you have to engage not only the enemy threats on each planet, but also the player threats is going to be one of the things that I think is going to be fun in the very real way that Bungie knows how to have a solid gameplay loop when they want to, but also giving players the opportunity to choose the threats that they want to face. If you only want to face PvP threats, maybe that's something Bungie goes for and there's a mode for that. If you only want to face PvE threats, maybe that's something you go for. But the mixture of PvE and PvP is something unique to the extraction shooter genre, and I do believe Bungie is going to commit significant resources and portions of the gameplay loop to that notion. Speaking of PvP, that brings me to my next point. The PvP experience in the cycle for me thus far feels pretty close to what I think Bungie is going to at least attempt to move towards in their game Marathon. Knowing that you have to be very strategic about what builds and what items you bring into the environment itself, also within your strategy you have to consider which battles you're going to choose to fight.
I don't have a gun or anything. Like literally nothing on me. I'm doing that drop.
Are you going to be like me and potentially just not engage? And if someone is asking you to not kill them, do you just not kill them? Or are you going to take more of the ruthless route and whenever you see another PvP combatant, you immediately try and take them down? All the while knowing that with the exception of a couple things that you can buy insurance for, again in an extraction shooter, the majority of your items will be lost in the game if you get killed. Now in the game The Cycle, there were a couple runs where I did run into other PvP combatants and did die. Knowing that there were multiple times where I was able to get heavy duty backpacks, to be able to carry more gear, I had rare materials that I collected in game, and then just being sniped or just gunned down and losing everything, if not the majority of what I was holding, not only made me want to quit the game, which a couple of times I did and just came back to it later, but also was just really jarring to be in a space where like you've worked so hard for something just for it to get taken away. The extent to which Bungie leans into that feature of a basic extraction shooter with this PvP component is still yet to be known, but I can only imagine what it feel like, again, just run with me in this example, but I can only imagine what it feel like to be grinding Last Wish, eventually get 1k, you're so glad you got 1k, it's this exotic weapon, it's really powerful, and then the next time you go in, someone kills you and you lose it. This thing that you literally just spent so much time grinding for, it's gone in the blink of an eye, you're dead in the game, someone else is able to pick up in game what you just dropped and claim it as their own. For me, I don't know how hard Bungie is going to lean into that aspect of an extraction shooter, but knowing that it's a possibility, knowing that we can be in a space where, again, Bungie has still not solved the cheater problem and potentially are going to have a cheater issue within Marathon the game. And being in a spot where maybe you're on part 5 of a 6-part quest, you've gotten so many great materials, you're well on your way to leveling up or getting to whatever landmark you want, and then you go in for another run and you get killed and lose everything. Some people are absolutely going to be able to bounce back. They're going to shake it off. They're going to say it's just part of the game and keep it moving. But for people like me, and I feel like I represent a good base of people who would even think about playing this type of game, you might just cut it off for the day. You might, come back to it, after the weekend. You might, take a little bit of a break. Because losing things early on in the game is one thing, but I can only imagine getting to like the pinnacle content, the in-game content, collecting really high stat valuable gear just for it to be gone in the blink of an eye. As of playing this cycle, the player count was definitely not as high as it was back in 2022 when it first launched, so I wasn't really running into a lot of other PvPers a whole bunch of the time, but when I did find myself in some gunfights. Some I won, some I lost, but understanding that there's that high risk in there, I'm hoping that Bungie can find a way to have a high reward if you're going to have to continuously put yourself in that position where you either have to win or you lose. Again, in the words of Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. And if you lose big. Speaking of losing big, this leads me to my last point, microtransactions. I know, as of recently in the past couple weeks, it's been a hot topic. Some folks are probably tired of hearing about the microtransaction conversation, but the reality is that microtransactions in a game of this style are going to happen. The extent of which is what I think we really need to be honest about as we enter into this game. Now, to be fully transparent, my entry point as a free-to-play player, completely free-to-play, have not paid for anything in game, coming into the cycle, I got access to a lot of really good content. Player base counts, otherwise, forgetting all of that, being able to get my hands on the juicy content, being able to explore the planet, really refine the skills, work on my movement tech in game, I had a blast. At no point did I feel like I was missing out on content or that there was a part of the storyline that was unclear. Being a free-to-play player in the cycle has been a rewarding experience. Although it's not a game I completely grind and it doesn't have a high player base count, and there are other factors which all culminate into, why I played at the frequency that I play it. But being in a space where we're thinking about this type of game, I literally cannot see a world where Bungie is not doubling, if not tripling, if not quadrupling down on finding ways to monetize the game, push microtransactions out the wazoo, and really make you feel like you actually have to give into that system. There's two aspects of this that I saw in the cycle that I think Bungie is going to potentially struggle with the community in this regard. The first being cosmetics. We've seen already in Destiny 2 how monetization has gone from simple cosmetics that really didn't interfere in the game to full-blown battle passes that you can pay for, prepay for in advance all the way to level 100, being able to get exotic weapons that are maybe not always game-breaking, but super powerful exotic weapons that all you have to do is just pay whatever price Bungie puts out there and get the cool weapon. In addition to new unique armor pieces, again talking about Destiny 2, that come with the different DLCs and season packs that sometimes alter the meta of the game. In the cycle, my experience was more so that the cosmetics were cool, but I never felt any real pressure to dive in to buy a new skin for a melee weapon, or buy a new weapon charm, or buy a new suit for my operator, or whatever the case may be. I never felt too much of a push. The emotes, the skins, the boosters, all those different things felt very clear that they were there, but it didn't feel like if I didn't collect those things and buy them immediately, that will actually be missing out on a part of the game. Unfortunately, with the trend that we've seen with Destiny 2, I don't think that's going to be the case with Marathon. I do believe Bungie is going to push for heavy monetization of this type of system, knowing that you're going to be able to get certain weapons that potentially may be super pivotal for the PvP aspect of this game in the new season battle pass. Maybe there is a new weapon that doesn't really play well in general, but there's a really specific skin, I'm looking at you Arbalest, where the reticle operates in a very specific way, and now you can really snag those headshots. Some of this may seem far-fetched, but when we actually take a hard truth pill and look at the legacy that Bungie has been leaving behind for going on 10 years now, it's really not seeming too out of the question that they would really push heavily for some type of system. Obviously, battle passes are not unique to Bungie and they're a very standard thing, but the extent to which a battle pass exists and potentially morphs the way that players engage with the game is up to the company. And right now, I don't have a lot of faith in Bungie that they're going to do right by the player base and actually be able to offer options that feel like a choice and not a mandatory assignment to get. currently in this cycle, there's not just a regular option for a battle pass, but there's also an option to get the premium plus battle pass plus 25 free levels on that battle pass when you purchase at that higher level. Does that sound familiar, Destiny 2 peeps? Remember that we now have the option to not just get the battle pass, but also get 10 free levels in Destiny 2? You can't sit here and tell me that Destiny is not going to mimic this model in which you have to lean into this resource, or at least, taking a step back, highly encouraged to lean into this method that ultimately nets them more profit. Now again, obviously cosmetics are optional, but the reality is, who doesn't want to look cool in the game? Are we really going to sit here and act like Bungie isn't going to look for collaborations to put together really cool skins? A prime example is the Fortnite collaboration that we not too long ago had with the Destiny 2 franchise. So you really can't convince me that Bungie's not going to double down, if not triple down, on those type of opportunities where they're going to entice you to actually lean into your pockets, deep into your pockets, and pull out some hard cash for this game. Obviously, this is all speculation. We don't have any data or information yet to say what specifically is going to happen in that type of environment, but I think, let's not be naive on this one. Bungie is here to make money. Bungie may or may not listen to community insight on that, and ultimately they're going to do what's in the best interest of their pockets. And if we as a Destiny 2 community can already see how they're pushing for those profit margins in Destiny 2, you really can't tell me that they're not going to try and do a similar thing in Marathon once it launches. Now, I'm going to stop there for this video because there are a number of different avenues that we can go into when we're talking about extraction shooters, and also we can potentially dive into another video if you all like this one and talk about the pros and cons of other games like Escape from Tarkov. But ultimately, what I really want to press in this video is the fact that when we're looking at what we can expect from Marathon, before we even get any official gameplay trailers, get information about how they're going to monetize the game, all that information that's going to come in the leading months and years up to the game launch, I really want us to go in there as best we can with our eyes open. We at least need to be able to admit that this style of game is very niche and that Bungie is going to find a great way, because they're Bungie and they got money now, but they're going to find a great way to make it their own, and they're going to find a way to make it enticing, and there's going to be a great launch. More than likely there's going to be a great launch and people are going to flock to the game. There's going to be record-breaking numbers of people who are engaged in the game, but ultimately, just like what we're seeing in Destiny 2, the long-term success is going to depend on how they approach this game, how much they're willing to really push the profit margins, and ultimately how much in this game, similar and maybe not similar to Destiny 2, how much are they actually going to listen to the community of players who are actually playing the game, who are going to potentially create content for the game, and ultimately be a part of pushing the brand. With the issues that they're a lot of times willing to ignore in Destiny 2, I don't think that there's going to be high hopes for Marathon the game. That said, there are so many opportunities for this game to do well, and ultimately, critiques about Bungie aside, I love Bungie games, and I'm going to give this a try, and I really want to see where this game could go. Whether it does poorly or whether it does really well, we'll be here to cover the news, and as always, I'm looking forward to hearing what you all think. Do you have experience with extraction shooters? What was your experience in those games? Do you think Bungie will follow this kind of model that we're seeing in the example of the cycle? Or do you feel like we just have no clue of what we're going to expect, and let's just wait and see what Bungie gives us? All in all, looking forward to hearing from you all in the comment section. I'm so excited to continue the discussion and see where this game's go, because if this turns out to be a really solid game, I think we could potentially take this places with content creation. Let me know your thoughts. Looking forward as always to seeing y'all Starside, and we'll talk to y'all next time. Peace.